How long can you deceive someone who once meant everything to you? This is a story of betrayal, disillusionment, and the journey to freedom. For 22 years, Charles was a devoted husband and father, dedicating himself to his family and career. But one day he realized that the life he built on stability and trust had been shattered by the person he trusted most. Follow his journey as he untangles the web of lies, manipulation, and hypocrisy, ultimately finding himself in the process. This is a story of how love can turn into a trap and betrayal into liberation. Throughout my 22 years of marriage, I took pride in being a caring husband and father, someone who would move mountains to ensure his family's happiness and safety. Like many, I envisioned a life with a partner built on shared goals, trust, and mutual understanding. But life has a way of altering even the best-laid plans, revealing unexpected challenges where we least expect them. No matter how hard we try, difficulties sometimes emerge. Meeting Scarlet felt like finding the ideal partner. She was ambitious and insightful, qualities I deeply valued as we began building our future together. I threw myself into developing our business while also fulfilling my responsibilities at home. However, over time, the very traits that drew us together began to drive us apart. Subtle cracks widened into deep chasms that ultimately broke our relationship. This is the story of how the early signs of drifting apart evolved into the collapse of my family life. My name is Charles Moore, and this is the story of the gradual unraveling of my marriage, marked by Scarlet's waning self-care and an ever-growing emotional gap. Scarlet and I were introduced by mutual friends who believed we were a perfect match. She had just graduated from university and held a managerial position at a bank. A colleague arranged a double date, thinking our shared professional ambitions and values would create a bond. Our first blind date, a meeting between an accountant and a young businesswoman, brought unexpected excitement. From the start, we understood that neither of us was expecting any real closeness that evening. Though I found her modestly attractive and wouldn't have minded if she'd let her guard down a bit, she kept a distance, clearly uncomfortable with physical contact. If she had any curves, they were concealed under a loose sweater, a long skirt, and a strict blazer. We dove into a deep conversation about our career goals, pleasantly surprised by how well our views aligned. Both of us came from small, middle-class towns and had moved to the city in search of professional growth. My dream was to become an entrepreneur, using my accounting skills to distinguish profitable projects from risky ones. She aimed to advance in the corporate world and imagined short maternity leaves while climbing the career ladder and building a family. This gave me hope that she might someday want a family and even consider a future with me. That night, when I walked her to her apartment, she gave me a quick hug, thanked me, and went inside. I thought, well, it's better than another Saturday night alone. The next Monday, Lincoln, a colleague, stopped by my office to offer a congratulatory handshake. "You must have had a quiet Saturday with Brenda," I joked. Lincoln grinned. "Saturday was great, but I'm actually here to congratulate you." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Really?" "Scarlet wouldn't stop talking about you to Brenda," he laughed. "You must have made quite an impression." I blinked, taken aback. "It was a nice evening, but I didn't think it was anything special." Lincoln chuckled. "She asked Brenda to tell me to tell you to call her, like high school, passing notes." "Well, I guess I should give her a call," I replied, still a bit confused. Scarlet clearly saw potential in our relationship long before I realized it. A few months later, I started to notice her true beauty under her reserved exterior. One morning, when she got out of bed, I was stunned. She admitted that she dressed conservatively to avoid unwanted attention she'd faced in school. Our connection grew from a powerful mix of chemistry, admiration, and mutual respect. Marriage soon became the natural next step, and eventually, we had 2 daughters, Hannah and Miranda. Before the children, our physical connection had been intense, and it only deepened afterward. As Scarlett's career progressed and her responsibilities increased, I thrived as an accountant. Eventually, I took time off to get my CPA certification. My boss, Mr. Karstadt, became a mentor, giving me advice that extended far beyond textbooks. Over lunch one day, he confided, "I'm negotiating the sale of the firm to a larger company. Charles, you're my best employee, but I don't think you'll be happy under their management." I was stunned. "You should consider leaving the company and starting your own practice," he continued. "The new structure will stifle your entrepreneurial spirit and you'll end up disappointed. Take a few clients with you so you won't start from scratch." Though it was unexpected, I felt deeply grateful for his guidance. "Thank you," I said, moved by his faith in me. Over that weekend, Scarlet and I endlessly discussed where my career was headed. She was unwavering in her belief that I should stay in my current job. "The smartest move is to keep your position. Corporate life provides stability," she insisted. "You'll have a steady income if you stay with a big company." I listened, but I couldn't shake the thought. Is this really how I want to spend the next 40 years of my life? "Scarlet," I countered, "I need more than just stability. This is my moment to go after my dreams. I'll start small, work from home, and build it up gradually." Her skepticism was clear. "Charles, this is an unwise decision," she replied with a practical edge in her voice. With 2 young children, she was focused on our immediate needs. "We can't afford unnecessary risks right now." I understood she was right, but I felt an urgency building within me. "I can't put it off any longer," I said. "It's now or maybe never." She sighed reluctantly. "Fine," she finally answered, "but I won't be financially supporting this venture." She made it clear that her income would go into a separate account and cover only her share of household expenses. I agreed, though I felt a quiet irritation inside. But she wasn't finished. "I also won't be co-signing any loans for this," she added, her tone turning colder. "If this fails, I don't want to be involved." I hadn't expected her financial involvement, but I couldn't help feeling that she'd take more interest once things picked up. The first year was tough. Her income remained steady, while mine fluctuated. By the second year, my earnings surpassed hers, though she still wished I had a regular paycheck. My business was evolving, shifting from basic bookkeeping to strategic consulting, something I enjoyed and excelled at. With my income now exceeding hers, I reinvested as much as I could into the business, keeping just enough to match her contribution to our household expenses. When promising projects came along, I sometimes waived my consulting fees in exchange for a small percentage of future profits, usually between 7% and 17%, allowing clients to access my services without significant upfront costs. This helped them avoid substantial initial expenses while giving me a stake in their success. However, it meant I couldn't oversee their finances, as my share created a conflict of interest. Clients could buy out my shares at market value, though Scarlet disapproved of these arrangements, so I stopped mentioning them to her. My firm's income didn't look impressive on paper, but I was building equity through these partnerships, even if it didn't yet show up in my balance. As I grew my team, I gained more flexibility, allowing me to spend more time with our children, attending their games, performances, and school events. Those years were incredibly fulfilling. The kids were happy, and we were financially stable. Scarlett's career was also advancing, and she was promoted to assistant vice president at her bank, reporting directly to several senior executives. Her new position inspired her to want a home that matched her status. "Now that I've moved up in the bank, we need a bigger, more impressive house," she announced one evening. I suggested waiting, but she dropped the topic, until Saturday, when she went to an open house alone and immediately signed a contract. I was disappointed but realized there wasn't much I could do. Through my professional network, I learned she referred to me as a miserable accountant, and soon snide remarks about my career began slipping into our conversations. One Saturday, I decided it was time to address the growing tension. "Can we sit down and talk for a few minutes?" I asked, catching her in the living room. She barely looked at me. "It can wait," she replied. "I need to finish the laundry." But I pressed on. "I really think we need to talk." She hesitated, then said, "Fine, this evening," and left the room. "Just 15 minutes. That's all I'm asking," I called after her, but she brushed me off. Later. That evening, she claimed she was too tired to talk. The next morning, while the kids were getting ready for Sunday school, she left with them before we had a chance to talk. Later that day, as she was about to leave again, I stopped her at the door. "Can we just talk quickly?" I asked. Her patience snapped, and she responded sharply, "Why are you pestering me all weekend?" "You're acting like a spoiled child," she sighed, her voice carrying a hint of fatigue. "I need to help my mother with her bills. I'll be back in an hour." I took a slow, deep breath. "I only asked for 15 minutes, but it's been an entire day," I replied calmly. "Fine, I'll wait." It was several hours before she finally returned, heading straight to the kitchen to start dinner. After the meal, I decided to bring up the topic again, trying to keep my tone even. "Maybe we can talk now?" I asked as gently as possible. She looked at me and irritation flashed in her eyes, but I went on. "I feel like we're drifting apart, and I'm really concerned about where our marriage is headed." My words made her freeze, the fork slipping from her hand, and our daughters looked up, listening cautiously. "We barely talk, and I'm starting to feel ignored," I continued. "It's something we need to discuss before things go too far." Her face tensed, and she replied, "Now is not the time or place for this conversation. I can't believe you brought this up in front of the kids." "Scarlet, you're pushing me away again," I said, frustration beginning to seep into my voice. "Is there something you're hiding from me?" Without answering, she abruptly stood, her expression turning unreadable as she cleared her plate, leaving me alone with our daughters, who watched with concern. Breaking the silence, our older daughter, Miranda, quietly asked, "Are you and Mom going to get a divorce?" The question stunned me, and I quickly reassured her, struggling to keep my voice steady. "No, sweetheart, we're not getting divorced. Sometimes parents don't agree, just like you and your sister. But that doesn't mean we don't love each other, or you both. Mom just needed some time alone to think things over." The tension in the room eased slightly, but an uneasy feeling lingered. I stayed up late in my office, waiting for her to come back. Finally, just before midnight, she got into bed, and I lifted the blanket, inviting her to lie next to me. "I'm not saying I was wrong," she murmured, "but I'll try to show you the same respect I expect from you." I hugged her, and for that evening at least, the tension faded. "That's all I want, Scarlet. I just want to be the best husband I can be for you." For a brief moment, this small truce brought some peace, though it was fragile, hiding deeper cracks. A few years later, Scarlet was promoted to Vice President of Regulatory Compliance, responsible for ensuring the bank met all requirements set by the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and other regulatory bodies. Her meticulousness and attention to detail suited her role perfectly. No decision was made without her official approval. My approach was more relaxed. I believed anything was permissible as long as it wasn't prohibited, which sometimes caused friction between us. She also didn't know about my investments, and although they were legal, I knew she wouldn't approve. Around this time, Scarlet started going out more in the evenings, attending girls' nights with her friends nearly every Tuesday. She came home later and later, while I stayed with our children, who were 17 and 15 by then. They didn't need constant supervision, but it was still important to guide them, and I did my best. One Tuesday evening, I heard her muttering irritably in the upstairs bathroom. Out of curiosity, I went up to see what was going on and found her leaning over the sink, quietly cursing. "What happened?" I asked. "My wedding ring fell down the drain," she said, clearly annoyed. "Are you going to get it out, or should I call a plumber?" I leaned over to check the drain, sensing her frustration. "If it's trapped, I can retrieve it," I replied, but she cut me off. "Forget it. I don't need it tonight anyway." Her words hung in the air. She didn't need her wedding ring, and she didn't seem too upset about it. A warning bell sounded in my mind, but I held back, deciding to watch rather than argue. As I turned, I saw her head to the bedroom, wearing a set of lingerie I hadn't seen before. She avoided my gaze, adjusting her dress, and quietly said, "Just another girls' night like every Tuesday. You know that." Seeing no point in pushing further, I went to get my tools. By the time I returned, she was gone. She'd left without a word. The siphon was on her side of the sink, so I had to move her things a bit to reach it. While clearing the area, I noticed a plain, unmarked box tucked in the corner. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. What I found inside made me pause: a dowsing pendulum and an enema kit. What could she possibly be doing with these? She often mentioned her digestive issues, but I'd never seen her use anything like this. And why would she need an enema at all? The nozzle was still damp, and a gnawing feeling began to settle in my stomach. They say husbands are often the last to know the truth. Was that the case for me too? But I realized I didn't know anything for sure yet. In business, I'd learned that before jumping to conclusions, it's best to do some research first, and here that approach seemed to make sense too. I needed more information. For now, I still had to retrieve her ring from the siphon, since she'd likely be looking for it soon. Before closing the box, I noted its location and took a few photos of its contents in case she moved it again. When she returned around midnight, she headed straight to the bathroom and stepped into the shower. I pretended to be asleep, though my heart was racing. Later, she slipped into bed, chuckling softly. I lay next to her, barely closing my eyes all night. Early in the morning, I got up before she did, went to the bathroom to shower, and checked the box. As expected, it had been moved, and the nozzle was damp again. My marker was shifted. An enema before going out, the pendulum afterward. She was preparing for something intimate. I took a sample of her underwear, sealed it, and arranged for testing. My experience as an accountant had taught me how to handle asset division during divorce. Scarlet would likely keep the house until the kids went off to college, which would mean child support and less time with my daughters. I couldn't bear the thought of her bringing someone else into our home around our daughters. I needed a plan, and the first step was securing custody. I'd always been a reliable, financially stable parent. Now I needed to show that she wasn't as fit for parenting. The word poison came to mind, not literally, but emotionally. Scarlet was a perfectionist, often setting unrealistic demands on people. When things went wrong, she'd lose control, nitpicking over the smallest details. She'd criticize colleagues, me, and even the kids. I could use this to highlight her behavior to our daughters so they'd want to stay with me when it was all over. Ideally, I'd keep both the house and custody of the girls. I decided to proceed carefully, starting small. I turned off her alarm, knowing she hated being late. Since she got home so late, I thought she might appreciate some extra sleep. When our daughters came down for breakfast, they asked where she was. "She had a late night," I answered calmly. They didn't think much of it and enjoyed a slower-paced morning. I'd seen her texting late at night, so I put on her playlist and left it on silent mode, hoping the battery would drain by morning. She had an important meeting on Wednesday, a big event for her. After a while, I heard her angry yell from upstairs. She was furious about oversleeping after her night out. I went out to the garage to avoid her mood and noticed that one of her car's tires was slightly deflated, just enough to trigger a warning light on the dashboard. She hated having the screen cluttered with alerts, so I knew it would annoy her on her way. Scarlet dashed around the house, frantically trying to get dressed, fix her hair, and do her makeup. I closed the garage door from inside, leaving the roller shutter down. She didn't notice and backed up, denting the lower panels of the door. The girls and I watched as she hit the steering wheel in frustration. When she finally drove forward, I lifted the door, and she nearly hit the mailbox as she pulled out. "This might be more interesting than I thought," I muttered to myself. "Let's see how she handles a dead phone all day." I hugged the kids and reassured them, "Mom's just under a lot of stress. Things will be fine by evening. She loves you." Me? Maybe not so much. We had a hearty laugh before parting for the night. I deliberately increased the volume on the alarm clock to make sure it would go off in the morning. Unlike Scarlet, I always made it to work on time, even humming to myself. The morning was going smoothly until around 10 o'clock when my phone vibrated so hard it nearly slid off the desk. Smiling, I thought, it must be my sweet wife. "Good morning, darling," I answered cheerfully. Instead of a greeting, a stream of curses greeted me. She was clearly furious. "You need to come fix my tire. I could have crashed driving this wreck. If I had a proper car, none of this would have happened." I calmly replied, "Just call roadside assistance, they'll handle it." Her response? "Go to hell." Still maintaining a good mood, I informed my assistant that I'd be stepping out for a while. First, I stopped by a security store and picked up a few small cameras and a voice recorder to discreetly slip into her handbag. I needed a better understanding of what was going on. At home, I installed cameras in the living room and bedroom. I also took a few moments to repair the damaged garage door panels, which had been an eyesore, a silent signal to the neighbors about recent tensions. Then I checked my accounts and investments. We had only one credit card, which I immediately blocked, deciding to keep the joint account open until payday to transfer half of the balance. I got back home before Scarlet returned and started preparing dinner. Just then, I heard the garage door creak open. She stormed into the house, nearly ripping the door off its hinges, startling our daughters with her loud entrance. Her face was twisted with anger, and she shot me a look full of hatred. "This was the worst day of my life. I'm going to take a bath." Dinner passed in silence and tension, as if we were all awaiting an impending storm. Afterward, I went upstairs to see if she wanted anything to eat. She hurled a bar of soap at me, snapping, "If I wanted dinner, I'd tell you. Leave me alone." Taking advantage of the moment, I made a small cut in the lining of her bag and discreetly slipped in the voice recorder. I took a pillow and settled on the couch, purposefully avoiding her morning wake-up by her alarm clock. As planned, her loud alarm with rap music blared through the house. Her shriek and our daughters' frightened cries echoed through the rooms as if a sergeant had woken them up. While she was occupied in the bathroom, I went to the garage and smeared dark grease on the seat of her car to simulate an incident on her way to work. Her mood didn't improve. To make it more convincing, I left a bit of grease on the skirt she wore yesterday. Soon after, her assistant Linda, my friend's wife, called, informing me that Hurricane Scarlet had stormed into the office, enraged by the stain. The tension was building. I stopped playing these pranks in the following days, but minor mishaps kept happening anyway. One of her diamond earrings disappeared from the vanity. A mysterious wine stain appeared on a recently worn dress, though she couldn't recall spilling anything. The lining on her favorite shoes began to peel off. I even altered a few of her account passwords so that her usual ones would be rejected. And each time she drove her car, a loose ball bearing rattled in the door with every break or turn. It seemed each day brought her a new annoyance. For Scarlet, the stress was palpable and building, and I'd say we were about halfway there. The real test came on Tuesday. She returned from work, changed for yet another girls' night out, barely glancing at us. She locked herself in the bathroom to get ready, and, like last week, I noticed the tip of an enema kit was wet. This time, I decided to track her movements through her phone's locator. Her first stop was a restaurant. Then she headed to a dance bar. I wasn't interested in what she was doing there. I only cared about whom she'd leave with. Watching her movements from home, I marked her next location, then drove to the bar and waited in the parking lot. Sipping coffee, I watched as she came out, holding hands with some man. They hugged, kissed for a long time, and then parted, getting into separate cars. I followed them for a block before passing the case over to a tracker. They drove to a motel off the highway where I watched as they entered a ground-floor room with an exterior entrance. Once I was sure they'd stay there for a while, I parked nearby and noted the make, model, and license plate of her boyfriend's car. Then I let a bit of air out of one of the front tires so that a low-pressure alert would come up and smeared a little grease on the windshield. I knew her first reaction would be to turn on the wipers, which would only spread the grease across the glass. Tomorrow promised to be interesting. I was also looking forward to listening to the audio recording from the device I had discreetly placed in her bag. A little after midnight, she got into bed following a brief stop in the bathroom without touching her phone or setting an alarm. So far, everything was going according to plan. Once she was asleep, I retrieved the recorder, connected it to my laptop for charging, and downloaded the audio files. The next morning, home alone, I sat down to listen to the recording. Despite the background noise in the restaurant and club, the recorder had picked up enough. From their conversations at the motel, I learned that the guy's name was Julian, and apparently their Tuesday and Thursday meetups had become a regular thing. They laughed, discussing whose turn it was to book the motel next time, joking about how the bank president, unknowingly, was indirectly sponsoring their dates. They'd even been charging their lavish restaurant stops to corporate accounts since the hotel was conveniently located near the bank's headquarters, making it easy to justify as business trips. "So when are you finally going to leave your husband?" Julian asked. Scarlet laughed. "Probably after Miranda heads off to college. I love my girls, but I'm not about to waste my best years on him. He handles them just fine, which frees me up to be with you. But lately, even being around him just irritates me. I've tried to motivate him, but he's perfectly content with his ordinariness. Why not just leave now? You'd get alimony and more time for us," Julian suggested. She laughed again. "With alimony, I'd still have to cover tuition, the housekeeper, and the cook. He's doing all that for free now. Plus, he deposits money into our account, and I'm putting part of my salary away for when I finally leave. It's a win-win." Julian laughed with her. "So when's your own escape plan?" she asked. "It's already on the calendar," he replied. "Her father made me sign a prenuptial agreement that says after 20 years, I get half of her multi-million-dollar stock portfolio." Scarlet laughed. "Perfect timing. That'll be around when Miranda heads off to college so we can both be free." Listening to them, I felt a mixture of disgust and astonishment. Their cynicism and selfishness were staggering, yet they seemed a perfect match for each other. Both were equally calculating, taking turns booking the hotel to avoid suspicion and keeping their meetups low-key. Scarlet was meticulous, checking tire pressure and closing the garage door as she left the house. At home, her indifference to me and the kids was clear. When I got the test results, they confirmed my suspicions. Traces were found on her clothing. With this evidence, I was ready to contact my attorney, Anthony Hernandez, and initiate divorce proceedings. I intended to demand full custody, given that I'd been the primary caregiver, and I doubted the girls would want much to do with her after all of this. Anthony gave me a heads up. "I'll file the paperwork, but be prepared for resistance." I proposed a settlement. We'd split the house equally after its sale when both girls went to college, and each of us would keep our respective investments and retirement funds. Given the income disparity, neither of us would owe alimony, though she would still be required to contribute toward the kids' expenses, including college costs. Our savings would cover tuition, housing, books, and meals, with the exception of incidental costs. Scarlett's recent promotion to vice president at the bank granted her access to a deferred compensation plan, which I planned to keep as leverage in case she tried to claim my business assets. To prepare, I quietly moved essentials to storage and backed up files on the computer daily. I hoped to keep the house, though I had no idea how she'd react when she was served with the papers. On my lawyer's advice, I hired a private investigator to dig into Julian's past, giving him Julian's license plate to start the search. Every year, after the budget review, senior bank management hosts a lavish dinner and dance at a hotel. It's a formal event where executives and their spouses arrive in evening attire, and many even book rooms for the night. Scarlet mentioned it to me years ago, but when she herself became a senior manager, she made it clear I was not welcome there. She often threw this in my face, hinting that if I'd achieved more, I could be part of that circle too. I had long grown tired of her company. As the event approached, I resumed my search, going through Scarlet's drawers and closets, hoping to find traces of her affairs. A week before the event, I found a shoebox hidden deep in the back of her closet. I knew these hidden corners well. Inside was a pair of expensive shoes, but there was no receipt. When I looked up the model's cost, I was stunned. It was over $2,000. I decided to have a little fun. Instead of swapping them for her old slippers, I took the shoes to my workshop and used a vise to slightly twist each heel by just a few degrees. Then I carefully wrapped them back up and put them in place. Since discovering her secret box, I'd learned to handle delicate items with caution. The day before the event, the detective called me and invited me to his office. He informed me that Scarlet's lover, Julian Thomas, was a senior credit manager at her bank. This could affect Scarlet's career. Her primary duty was ensuring compliance in the credit department, and the bank strictly enforced a policy against personal relationships between employees. They were treading on thin ice. "Perfect," I said, and asked him to set up cameras at the senior manager's event at the hotel on Friday. The detective already had a photo of Scarlet, so I requested he capture her walking and dancing. The detective agreed without question, and I eagerly awaited what he would record. The footage from Friday night was priceless. Scarlet stumbled awkwardly, her altered heels causing her legs to splay, leading to an unsteady, swaying gait. She bumped into tables and even managed to knock over 2 bottles of red wine. I joked that it was worthy of America's Funniest Home Videos, if only Scarlet would sign a release form. Of course, in the end, she and Julian slipped away to his room for the night. A tiny camera under the door caught it all. Modern technology is simply amazing. Scarlet returned home almost at noon on Saturday, hiding in the bedroom until Sunday morning. Skipping church on Sunday was unusual for her, but that's what she did. On Wednesdays, she typically returned home exhausted, likely due to her night classes on Tuesdays, and headed straight to a hot bath. But this Wednesday, I decided to have some more fun. She barely noticed me as she walked to the bathroom. I waited until I heard the water running, signaling she was getting ready for a bath, and snuck into the utility closet. Every faucet in the house had its own water line, controlled by a distribution manifold. Quickly, I cut off the hot water to the bathroom, leaving only the icy cold. As soon as she turned off the water, I restored the hot water supply. Moments later, I heard her scream as she sank into the icy bath, slipping on the soapy bubbles. She flailed, grabbing at the edges of the tub. I hurried in to help, but by then, she had already torn the towel rack right out of the wall. Struggling not to laugh, I offered her my hand. She was wet, shivering, and furious. She hit me and shouted about the problem with the hot water. The girls ran over, but Scarlet, glaring at them with fury, immediately blamed them, claiming they must have used up all the hot water. "I can't get a moment's peace because of you," she yelled. "Get out of my sight." She stormed off, leaving the girls in tears. They tried to explain they hadn't used any hot water, but she cut them off. "I don't want to hear your excuses. Leave." They walked away, crying. I hadn't expected her rage to lash out at them so quickly. I had miscalculated how far her anger could spread. Then she turned to me, filled with hate. "What are you staring at, idiot? Fix my bathroom." When I saw her struggling with the hot water in the shower, I stepped in to help. Gently turning the faucet, I let her feel the warmth on her hand to show her that the water was now running. We stood in silence for a moment before I turned away and left with the girls. The dinner I'd started on the stove was left to cool. Instead, I decided to take the girls out, hoping it would lift their spirits a bit. A few blocks away, I pulled over to comfort them as they cried. "I'm sorry you had to go through this," I said softly. "You both deserve better. You're amazing, and I'm so proud of you." I urged them to forgive not only their mother but also me for not being able to shield them from situations like these. Gradually, their tears subsided, and I reminded myself of how important it was to handle these tensions delicately, especially for the girls' sake. Despite my own disappointments regarding Scarlet, My primary focus remained on the girls' well-being. When we returned home, it was late, and dinner sat untouched in the kitchen. I settled on the couch to sleep, but at some point in the night, I woke to find Scarlet standing over me. Slightly startled, I muttered, "Yes?" After a pause, she admitted, "I shouldn't have yelled at the girls like that. It wasn't their fault. I must have just confused the faucets." She explained how the past month had been one setback after another. Flat tires, broken appliances, small frustrations that accumulated and pushed her to the edge. "I need to get a grip," she added quietly, and went upstairs, ending the conversation as abruptly as she'd started it. The following week brought an unexpected opportunity. A business partner mentioned a 2-bedroom apartment available for half price at a resort due to a last-minute cancellation. The timing was perfect. A trip between Christmas and New Year's. I told him I'd think about it. The girls were still upset about their mother's outburst. Though Scarlet had apologized, her words had left a mark. When I asked the girls if they'd like to go skiing, their eyes lit up and they hugged me tightly. Their joy solidified my decision, and I booked the trip for the 4 of us, opting for refundable tickets just in case. Later that evening, Scarlet came downstairs looking refreshed and ready to join us for dinner. I asked our daughter Hannah to invite her, and she struggled to contain her excitement, nearly bursting out, "Mom, Dad rented a place for Christmas! Are you coming with us? It'll be so much fun!" Scarlet smiled as she prepared to respond, but then paused, her expression shifting slightly. After a moment, she raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smirk on her lips. "I'd love to, sweetheart, but I need to stay at the bank until year-end. It's important to close out all the balances. I'm really sorry." Seeing the disappointment on Hannah's face, I felt a pang of regret. Scarlet's reason was unconvincing. Anyone could see she didn't have to stay. That slight smirk betrayed her real intentions. She likely planned to spend the week at home with Julian. In anticipation of the trip, I discreetly hired a private investigator to install cameras at home for remote access. My goal wasn't to spy on her and Julian, but simply to get a glimpse into this other side of her life. Before leaving, I secretly applied jalapeno juice to the tip of her medical device. If she was seeking thrills, she'd certainly find them. At the airport, Scarlet maintained her usual demeanor, giving the girls a quick hug and me a fleeting kiss. "Take care," she whispered. I replied, "I love you, Scarlet," to which she responded with an indifferent, "I do too." The flight went smoothly, and when we arrived, the girls were thrilled to see the Rocky Mountains for the first time. They ran out onto the terrace, eager to breathe in the fresh, pine-scented air. I set up my laptop, preparing to check the cameras at home. Right on schedule at 7 p.m., Scarlet returned home and headed straight to the main bathroom. I didn't need a camera in the bedroom. I was only interested in the general layout of the house. I could see the staircase, the living room, and the kitchen. Soon, I watched her come downstairs screaming in pain, just as I had anticipated. She quickly realized that someone had added jalapeno juice to her favorite prep cream. Her face turned bright red from the pain and irritation, and she was writhing in discomfort. I imagined the satisfaction my detective might feel watching her suffer. I wondered how long it would take her to recover, and if it would disrupt her carefully planned schedule for the week. Well, she just had a stroke of bad luck. That evening, I took the girls out for a walk. Fresh snow blanketed the streets, giving everything a peaceful winter glow as we made our way to pick up some pizza. On the way back to the condo, music from a nearby teen club reached us, a popular spot for kids to hang out while their parents relaxed. "Dad," Hannah asked, "can we go inside, just for a little while?" I agreed. After everything they'd been through lately, they deserved a bit of carefree fun. Inside, the club was full of energy. Kids dancing, laughing, and enjoying the evening. The girls wanted to stay, so I found a table near the edge of the room and reminded them to check in occasionally. It was perfect. I could keep an eye on them while also catching up on emails. After a bit, I saw the girls dancing, laughing, and chatting with some boys. Now and then, they'd glance at me, and I'd respond with an encouraging nod, holding a diet soda. Other parents were scattered throughout the hall, and across the dance floor, I noticed a woman who caught my attention. She had a striking appearance, and as we both kept an eye on our kids, we exchanged friendly smiles. She was with two sons who would occasionally come to her for snacks or money. Gradually, I noticed my daughters moving closer to where her boys were. When I finished with my emails, I looked up and saw her heading towards my table, drawing glances as she moved through the crowd. She wore fitted ski pants and a cozy sweater, radiating a calm warmth in the cool evening. She stopped by my table and smiled. "You must be Hannah and Miranda's dad. Why don't you join us? No need to sit alone," she said with a smile. I smiled back, trying to look at ease. "My girls always find good company," I replied. "I'm Charles," I introduced myself. "Donna," she responded warmly. "And those two over there are my sons, Zach and Michael, 17 and 15. They're already counting down the years until adulthood," she laughed. "My girls are the same age," I said with a smile. "Funny coincidence." She nodded and added, "Your daughters are wonderful. You have every reason to be proud." "Thank you," I replied with a nod. "And your boys seem well-mannered. Clearly your influence." Donna laughed. "Maybe. I work from home, so I'm always there in the morning and when they get back. They're my main focus in life right now." We discovered it was the first day here for both our families, and soon enough, the kids were planning to go skiing together. Donna and I agreed to take turns so that each of us could have some time to relax and spend a day with our teens. The plan was set. Send the kids off in the morning, enjoy a quiet breakfast, and then hit the slopes ourselves. Over the week, Donna and I got to know each other better, pleasantly surprised by our shared values. I eventually opened up to her, telling her about my struggles with Scarlet and the decision to divorce, though I avoided details about my custody plans. As difficult as it was to discuss, I knew I wanted my daughters with me, away from someone as self-centered as Scarlet. Donna shared that her husband had passed away 3 years ago in a drunk driving accident. We both harbored our own grievances toward the people who had disrupted our lives, and it felt good to talk to someone who understood. On our last evening, Donna and I went to dinner without the teens and ended the night quietly, sitting together on the couch, savoring a few peaceful moments after the kids had gone to bed. By the end of the week, we both knew we wanted to stay in touch. The kids were thrilled too, and I felt ready to wrap things up with Scarlet when we returned home. When we got back, I noticed how tired and worn out she looked. Perhaps joining us on the trip wouldn't have been such a bad idea after all. From the first night I watched my wife through the camera, the tension between us was palpable, but over time, that thrill faded, and I lost interest in tracking her actions. Deciding to end it all, I asked my attorney, Anthony, to handle the divorce paperwork. When I informed our daughters, they weren't particularly surprised. Over the last 3 months, they'd sensed the growing strain between Scarlet and me. They'd noticed that I had a sense of calm with Donna, while with their mother, there was constant tension. Finally, Hannah asked the question that had been hanging in the air. "What about us? Miranda and me, where will we live?" I hugged them both and assured them, "You have always been my top priority, and that will never change. I'm asking for full custody so we can stay here in this house. You'll continue at the same school, keep your friends, and I'll be with you every day." I added, "You can see your mom whenever you want. In this process, you'll have the right to choose where you feel most comfortable living. Whoever gets custody will stay in the house until both of you go to college. Remember that both your mom and I love you, no matter what's happening." I continued, "Take your time, take my car, and have dinner somewhere while your mom and I talk privately. It's best if you're not around right now." When they left, I noticed a few missed calls and messages on my phone, and I had a good idea who they were from. I called Scarlet back. She didn't waste time on pleasantries and immediately started speaking furiously, as if she wanted to scorch the phone with her tone. I let her talk until she wore herself out. Then she demanded an explanation, asking, "Why? Why are you doing this? Don't you love me after everything I've done for you and the girls?" Calmly, I replied, "Why don't you come over so we can discuss this in person?" She hung up without a word, and minutes later she entered the house repeating, "Why?" I maintained my composure and answered her question. "I know about Julian Thomas. I know you meet him every Tuesday evening. I don't even know how long it's been going on. What did you expect? I gave you a chance to rebuild our relationship during the family trip, but you chose him, not us. That was your choice, and now there are consequences. You traded 22 years of marriage for him." I told her, "Pack the essentials and find somewhere to stay while we sort this out. I won't throw out your belongings, but I think it's best if you find a hotel. You're free to see the girls anytime, but once you settle, discuss my divorce proposal with your attorney. It's fair. From this point on, we'll only communicate about the girls or your things. There's nothing left to say." I walked into my office, closed the door, and listened as she angrily packed her things. There was no sound of crying, which said a lot. In that moment, I realized I would never want to be with her again, and it seemed she felt the same. My next steps were clear: change the locks and update all the security codes. Throughout the divorce, her anger never faded, but it wasn't because she wanted to make things right or save the family. She was furious because she wasn't the one to file for divorce first. She wanted people to think she had decided to leave the pathetic accountant, not that I left because of her betrayal. What stung her the most was that I had made the first move, striking a blow to her pride. Neither of us wanted to consider counseling. We were both utterly drained. Any good memories of our shared past had long faded. Unlike many who feel trapped in a divorce, I felt relief. In the end, Hannah and Miranda chose to stay with me in the house. They saw their mother about once a week or every other week, though they didn't enjoy her habit of asking if I missed her. My contact with Scarlet was minimal, and I often tried to be away when she came to pick up or drop off the girls. Her contempt for me and my modest accounting firm was evident. She had distanced herself from everything tied to it. She decided to leave her 401k and deferred compensation untouched, assuming I didn't know about them. She also took on the childcare expenses, and since her job's insurance was better, that became her responsibility as well. I guarded the knowledge of her secret meetings at the hotel like a card I could play if ever needed. She only took the furniture that suited her taste, leaving the rest for me and our daughters. Family photos remained in place, as if she expected us to keep her image reverently. I suspected she had hidden accounts, but my only focus was on my daughters and my work. She and everything related to her became distant and irrelevant to me. Soon, someone anonymously sent a video of her and Julian to his wife, sparking a wave of legal proceedings across the city. They moved into upscale apartments, though I wondered if they would last once their affair went public. After the divorce, I invited Donna and her sons to spend weekends with us. We kept things respectful, exchanging only hugs and kisses, trying to set a healthy example for the children. Donna's calm presence became a balm after the bitterness left by my marriage. We both felt that our relationship was growing serious. Although Donna kept her own home, we were careful around our teenagers, who enjoyed each other's company in adjoining rooms, helping us maintain boundaries. Donna, who worked remotely as a nurse for an insurance company, needed an office, so I set one up for her at my house. Around a year later, I mentioned to a friend at an accounting firm that I'd heard about 2 senior employees using corporate credit cards for personal meetings during work hours. He thanked me for the tip, and after an audit, he took it to the bank president. The bank chose to settle the matter quietly, but Scarlet and Julian were fired. The bank notified its insurance company, which soon sought compensation. Now blacklisted from all banking jobs in the country, Scarlet and Julian lost part of their pension savings and were forced to leave their luxury apartments. The insurance company filed a lawsuit against them for credit card fraud. Julian's financial problems worsened due to his own divorce. which awarded a significant share of his future earnings to his ex-wife and children, an outcome he could have avoided had he waited for his prenuptial agreement to take effect. Scarlet now works as a paralegal in a divorce law firm, immersed in the legal and emotional chaos of other people's broken marriages. Every day, she returns to her modest apartment, reflecting on the fallout from her ruined marriage. She no longer seeks affluent professionals whom she once deemed more suitable than me. Meanwhile, investments I had nearly written off unexpectedly grew, totaling over $5 million by the end of the year. The future looks bright. Donna and I are planning our wedding for mid-August. Looking back, I see how drastically my life has transformed, shaped by hardships and unexpected blessings. I went through betrayal and heartbreak, once tied to a marriage crumbling under neglect and deceit. In those dark days, I tried to hold the family together, believing that loyalty and love could mend the rift between Scarlet and me. But her growing indifference revealed a bitter truth. The woman I once loved was gone. Our marriage didn't end solely because of her infidelity. It ended because of my own realizations. I had built my life around stability and dependability, values I upheld as a husband and father. But Scarlet began to despise these values. She craved status and luxury, a world in direct conflict with my focus on family and simplicity. For years I ignored the signs, convinced that hard work, faithfulness, and openness could bring us closer. But the divide grew too wide, and her disregard for our family's well-being became undeniable. When her double life was finally exposed, I found myself torn between anger over her betrayal and sadness for the life I'd envisioned for myself and my daughters. From that moment on, every step I took was to protect Hannah and Miranda from bearing the weight of their mother's choices. The divorce and custody process required strategy and resilience, but in the end, truth prevailed. The court recognized my dedication to my daughters, granting me custody and providing us the stability needed for a new life. In the quiet that followed, Donna entered my life. At first, I was cautious, hesitant to open my heart again after all the pain. But Donna was different. She accepted my past without judgment and respected my experiences. Her kindness and honesty reminded me that there is still light in the world, a warmth that gradually melted the walls I hadn't realized I'd built. Donna didn't try to heal my wounds or fix me. She was simply there, her sincerity and presence allowing me to find peace step by step. Our connection grew from a place of genuine friendship and mutual respect, completely unlike the tense and chaotic relationship I once had with Scarlet. Donna, like me, understood what it meant to raise children alone and had walked her own path through hardships. Her empathy and quiet strength opened my eyes to true partnership, what it means to genuinely trust and respect someone. She brought joy back into my life, and with her, I discovered the essence of real companionship, something I hadn't realized I was missing. Together with Donna, we've built a life filled with laughter, unconditional support, and a shared vision of the future. Our children, who have grown alongside us on this journey, have become strong and compassionate individuals. They have experienced firsthand the value of family and a love that can overcome pride and resentment. My daughters, once caught in the whirlwind of their mother's anger, are now flourishing in a home where they feel loved, valued, and protected. They've learned what it means to live with integrity and see that meaningful relationships are built on care, respect, and honesty. Looking back, I feel a mixture of humility and pride. Life has taught me the importance of staying true to my values, even when it means letting go of things that once felt essential. The trials I faced were undeniably tough, but they revealed a strength within me I hadn't known was there. Now, I understand that happiness isn't something that simply comes. It must be built with patience, trust, and the courage to pursue what truly matters. With Donna, I found a partner who cherishes these same principles, bringing happiness not only to me, but also to my daughters. She is not just a companion in life, Donna is a true partner with whom I am eagerly ready to share every aspect of my life. As our wedding day approaches, I feel a profound sense of gratitude for this second chance at love, the opportunity to build a family founded on trust, and the wisdom I've gained from my past challenges. This new chapter feels like an incredible gift, one I am committed to cherishing as devotedly as I do my daughters. The future, once shadowed by doubt and regret, has transformed into a life filled with hope and peace. To those who have endured betrayal and pain, I want to say, brighter days lie ahead. Life continues after the hurt, and though the journey may be difficult, each step is worth it. We have the strength to heal, to find happiness anew, and to envision a future full of hope and love. With Donna by my side, I am entering this new chapter with an open heart, ready to build a life rooted in laughter, compassion, and resilience. This may not be the life I once dreamed of, but in many ways, it's even better. The happiness I feel now comes from a deep place, strengthened by the awareness that I have earned it, and I am ready to fully embrace the peace and joy that we have all worked so hard to achieve. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story,